Begley in the legislative chambers. Jack Frost is on via telephone with no video. Mr. McGowan's on. I think we have, Mr. Friend will not be in attendance today.
Oh, all right. And it's 8:15.
Pardon
Shall
me?
It's 8:15. Shall we begin?
I think we shall.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Metropolitan Utilities District Committee meetings, regular monthly board meeting and public hearing this morning, December 3rd, 2020. This meeting is being live streamed from the Legislative Chamber at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center, located at 1819 Farnham Street. Due to the governor's recently issued executive order number 20-36 in response to the surge in COVID-19 cases, in-person meeting requirements of the Open Meetings Act are waived. Board members and district personnel have the option of participating remotely or in person. This order will be effective December 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2021. I would like to remind those in attendance in the chamber today that we must abide by the City Council ordinance requiring that all those present wear a face mask or a face covering in indoor public settings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Please continue to be mindful of social distancing. And if Mark Mendenhall is available, I'm going to hand the floor to him.
Good morning. Thank you, Director Howard. Just a few other comments here. In addition to the virtual format that you had stated that's per the Governor's Order 20-36, I'd also like to mention that there are several MED employees as well as Director Begley that is here present in the legislative chambers. The doors are open and the public is welcome to join. Two other housekeeping matters that I would like to mention. One, a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. This recording will be made available on the district's website, most likely in the next day or two. The microphones on all of your respective machines are generally very good. And so that means that we are able, and when we're preparing the recording, able to hear almost everything that's happening in your respective rooms. And so please be mindful of that. If you're not responding to a question from a director, I'd ask you to consider muting your microphone. And with that, thank you very much, Director Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Mendenhall. Now we'll have a safety briefing, and I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a briefing regarding protocol for all individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency.
Thank you. Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. For those in attendance, we are on the LC level, as it's known within this building. It is the second floor. A reminder to each of us that there's an emergency exit on each side of the room behind the accordion panels. There will be a fire extinguisher co-located in those extinguishers as well. For this one over here to the north, that is the location of the AED in this room. Show of hands, CPR and AED trained, please. Thank you. In case of emergency, the security manager, Zach Valentine, will contact 911 and meet them at the bottom of the escalator near the security kiosk. Should for any reason we need to evacuate, we will use this door over here and go down one flight of stairs to the outside, meet by the flagpole for a head count. And that concludes the safety briefing.
Thank you. Mary, could we have a roll call, please?
Begley.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Friend. Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
I'd like to advise those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. Construction and operations. Mr. Begley, or Mr. O'Brien, excuse me, capital expenditures.
The other fine Irishman in the room.
Agreed. Good morning. Corey O'Brien, Vice President of Engineering and Construction and Interim Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 5 this morning, we have our capital expenditures letter. There are 5 items on our letter this month. I will be speaking to several under the building, plants, and equipment section. If you turn to page 2, item number 1 under building, plants, and equipment is an emergency CNA for $153,000 for repairs to the Florence low service pump number 5. You may recall that we talked about this earlier in the year. This pump showed signs of trouble in June of this year, and it was placed in emergency standby for the summer. Once high pumpage was completed, the pump was removed and inspected, damage was found, and the pump was shipped to Hastings for repairs. We hope to have the repairs completed by the end of the year, and our goal is to have the pump back in service by the end of January 2021. So this expenditure would cover the removal, repair, and reinstallation of the pump. Item number 2, just a correction. Your letter states that the 5 trucks on that item are for the Field Services Division. Those trucks are going to the Water Distribution Division, and we will make that correction to the letter before it goes on file. Item number 3 is a CNA for $1.75 million for consultant design services for the Florence site header piping improvements project. These improvements are part of phase 4 of the Florence CIP. Phase 4 is scheduled to run from 2021 through 2025. Now this site header piping is a bit hard to picture in your head probably what that really means, but it's a complex network of pipes and valves in the area between the Minnelusa pump station and the Florence clear well. So it's basically the front yard of the Minnelusa pump station where all these pipes and valves are. Most of that network is original to the construction of the plant, dating back to the late 1880s. And it's in need of upgrade and replacement at this time. There are some other items as part of this project. Those include improved site drainage and improved site lighting, hydraulic surge analysis, landscaping improvements, upgrades to the Minnelusa fountain, and planning for possible UV disinfection in the future. And UV stands for ultraviolet. The process that we have gone through to solicit consulting firms is called the RFQ-RFP process. RFQ stands for Request for Qualifications. RFP stands for Request for Proposals. That process has yielded 2 firms that could be design firms for this project, and those 2 firms and their proposals are currently being evaluated by a team of district personnel. Approval of this CNA will also authorize the president to enter into an agreement for design services with the consultant selected by the district's team. I'll stop here to ask for any questions on that item if there are any. Okay, if not, we'll go on to the last one. Item 4 is a CNA for just under $400,000 to purchase additional mobile radio equipment. This will be phase 3 of the district's emergency communications system project. The district currently has 49 portable handheld radios that are used for emergency response purposes. This CNA will fund an additional purchase of approximately 90 additional portable handheld radios. And that will not only enhance our emergency communications, but it will allow us to start using these devices in normal operations during daily route work. That's all I have for the capital expenditures. Are there any questions?
Hey, Corey,
Yes, sir.
are these additional radios or are they replacing the radios already in service?
These are additions.
Is there any chance of any CARES money being able to fund this?
Ooh, that's a question I might have to look to somebody else to help with, but Mr. Hunter is coming to the podium.
Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. The question of whether any CARES money was being used to purchase these radios, this was a budgeted item in 2020, and to my knowledge, we're not currently using CARES money to purchase these new radios.
Okay, yeah, if it's budgeted, I don't believe we can.
Any other questions? I'd be happy to answer while I'm here.
Oh, but Tim, that was a very good point. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm back. The next item on the agenda is also mine to speak to, so if you would turn to tab 6. I'll speak briefly about the change order number 1 for the 36 and Edna pump station. Just as a reminder, this is a pump station located on 36th Street, and it's about 3 blocks south of Harrison. The project itself is about $1 million project to replace the natural gas engine and electrical system associated with it. We're putting in an electrical motor and a backup diesel generator. And during that process, several items needed to be changed. And so the change order represents 7 items for about $43,000. They cover such items as additional conduit and cabling associated with the transformer, emergency exit lights that were added to the scope of the project, the underground fuel tank. There had to be some modifications to that, and those items are covered by this change order. That's all I have on that, unless there's questions.
What's in the budget for this project? How much money?
That is a good question. I don't have that in front of me. I will be back when I speak about main extensions, and I will try and get that before I come back up.
I was just curious because we approved $1,022,000. The additional change numbers, are they above the budget or within the budget parameters? That's what I'm wondering.
I'm looking over at Steph Hen here, if she can help me with that. I'm thinking it's probably within, but I don't have the budget number in front of me.
You can get back to me, or here she comes.
Yep.
Good morning. Stephanie Hen, Director of Plant Engineering. Mr. McGowan, I can't give you the budget number off the top of my head. I can certainly get that, but we do know that this change order is within the CNA amount and within the budget amount.
Okay, you don't have to get back to me. I just want to make sure that the change order, $1 million, and that's all part of the budget. So
it is. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director McGowan, just to clarify that $1 million is the project cost in total. The change order is only $43,000.
Okay, I read that wrong. Thank you.
Too bad. Any other questions before I step down? Thank you.
Mr. Astamore, ratification of change order number 2 for the headquarters building renovation, please.
Steve Osdemore, Senior Vice President. Good morning. Behind tab 7, you will find the ratification of change order for the headquarters landscaping and security exterior features. This is for the project at 7350 WorldCom Drive, our new headquarters. This is not a request for additional capital. This is a procedural action to formalize the funding already approved through the competitive bidding process with the project managed by our current contractor, MCO. The entirety of the project remains well ahead of schedule and below the allocated funding amount. The new headquarters will be available for our next board meeting. And are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hen, acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates letter, please.
Good morning, Stephanie Hen, Director of Plant Engineering. I will be addressing the finals letter behind tab 8. We do have 8 finals this month. 3 are water development projects, 2 are water infrastructure projects, and 3 are water plant improvement projects. And I will be highlighting 3 of these projects today. I'd like to start by addressing item E, which is on page 2. This was an M.E. Collins project, who is one of our water infrastructure partners. This project occurred in the Benson area. It's about a $2.5 million project. In your documents, you'll see that it looks like there are additional costs of $616,000. That's actually, they weren't additional costs. The way that worked is we knew what the scope of work was, but we didn't have a great way to quantify the costs that went along with that scope of work. The reason for that is this was a very unorthodox type project. All of the mains laid in the back of the homes along the alley, which is very unusual. Typically, the water mains are in the front of the home along the street. So with those existing cast iron water mains behind the homes, we ran brand new PVC along the front of the home, along the street, and then we had to replace all of the services. Typically, we can reuse part of the services. In this case, we could not. There was 276 services on this project. 104 of those were lead replacements, which is a good thing. We got 104 lead services out of our system, but it did cause a whole bunch additional work. And part of that work that was entailed was we had to get into each of the customers' homes, and some piping had to happen within the homes. That couldn't really be quantified prior to bidding. I'd also like to address item F on page 2, which is a roll-off construction project. This is also one of our water IR contractors, one of our partners. This is the first 2020 project that we will be finaling with roll-off. You'll notice that there were some extra costs, mainly due to paving of about $27,000. But we were able to abandon about 1.5 miles of cast iron with this one, and with the Emmy Collins project, that was an abandonment of about 1.6 miles of cast iron. All good to get out of our system. I'd also like to talk about item G on page 3, which is a project that was completed by McGill Restoration. This was a restoration of our basin number 2 at Florence. This is part of the capital improvement plan. This was a roughly $3 million project. The scope of the project was basically to remove a good quantity of the existing concrete on the bottom and the sides of the basin. It was about 4 inches thick, and we were replacing it with 6-inch thick concrete. Once we got into the project, we realized we needed to do more removals than was anticipated, and so you will see a change order of about $221,000 that was due to additional removals required. And at that point, I am glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I've lost Stephanie.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if Steph was done or we lost her, but we must have lost her.
I know. I need to call Mr. Zellers until we know if Stephanie's done or if there's any questions.
Stephanie's concluded
Yeah, we
her
lost the
presentation.
Is anyone down in the legislative chambers that can hear us?
Can you hear me, Mark? Can you hear me, Gwen?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
There we go.
Steph has concluded her presentation.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any questions? Is everyone good with that? Then if Mr. Zellers will review the bids on contracts and materials.
All right, thank you. Good morning. John Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 9. There are a couple items that I'd like to discuss with you this morning. We went out for bids for one water main project, which can be found on page 1. This project is located at 144th Street and Highway 370 and is for the new Amazon Distribution Center. The low bid exceeds the engineer estimate, in which the reason is believed to be associated with the boring of the water main under 144th Street. However, the bid is lower than the estimate that was provided to the developer that was needed for the main extension agreement prior to design and bidding the project. The low bid submitted by Valley Corporation is recommended for approval. The next item may also be found on page 1. We are asking for ratification of the purchase of 650 computer monitors that will be utilized at the new headquarters. Existing monitors have reached their useful life and were scheduled to be replaced in 2021. We accelerated the purchase to avoid additional expense associated with moving older monitors to the new headquarters and then turn around and replace them later next year. The monitors purchased are outfitted with docking stations that provide for an easy connection to laptops, allowing employees to be more nimble between the office and work from home environments. The purchase was made through Sterling, who provided the lowest bid. And that's all I planned on discussing this morning, but would be happy to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Mr. O'Brien, please review proposed main extensions. Are we suffering technical difficulties?
Just getting it set up.
Okay,
Here I am. Corey O'Brien, Vice President, Engineering and Construction, and Interim Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 10 this morning is our main extensions agreement. We have 2 gas projects on our letter this month. The impact of those 2 projects is 169 single residence lots, 2 multi-residence lots, and 1 commercial lot. If you look at the map on page 1 or on the screen, you'll see that the 2 projects, there's 1 in subdivision 1 and 1 in subdivision 7. Turning to page 2, both projects are fairly modest in size. There's no oversizing at district expense and no deficiencies, so I'm really not going to speak to them beyond that. On the gas project number 1, if you're wondering where Danielle Road and Chenault Street is, it's on South 44th Street, just north of Capehart Road. That's all I have on that. Are there any questions I can answer? Thank you.
thank you. Marketing and Consumer Information, Director of Marketing and Contractor Services, Jason Stanek, will now review the annual marketing budget for 2021.
Good morning, Jason Stanek, Director of Marketing. Under tab 11, you'll find a summary of the proposed 2021 marketing programs, as well as a itemized budget for those programs. Just a reminder to the board that these programs are jointly funded by both Northern Natural Gas and the district. And then as part of this presentation, I'd like to give a brief overview of these programs and also provide a update on some of the things we worked on this past year. So our programs focus on 4 key areas. The first area is economic development, in which we work with local chambers, trade organizations, and the economic development groups throughout the region. Our second area is advertising, and so through print, radio, social media, and TV, we promote benefits of natural gas safety, and our water quality. The third area is our residential programs. And in this area, we focus on rebates directed at the residential consumers. We have our Habitat for Humanity program, where we work directly with them to promote installation of gas appliances in their homes, and then also our trade shows and events with the home builder organizations. And then the final area is our commercial and industrial programs. And under this, we have our multifamily development incentive program, which is our incentives we give for apartment complexes, as well as our CNG program. So just to highlight a few of the projects we worked on this past year, this first multifamily project is called Avador Omaha. It's a senior living complex at 132nd and Pacific Street. This project is 162 apartment units, and originally when the developer applied for gas, they had only applied for 4 gas meters for the entire building. So we worked with them, got them to go with individual gas furnaces, ranges, and gas meters. And this is a little unique as well because, as you can see from that bottom picture, all the meters are installed in an underground parking garage at this complex, so that we have 4 meter banks similar to this below the building. The reason for that was there just was not enough wall space around the building to get that many meters on. The second project is it's a new construction apartment complex called Trade Winds near 209th and Q Street. At this point, there's only 1 building occupied, but when this project is built out, there'll be approximately 600 apartments. And again, we were able to work with this developer to get individual gas meters, furnaces, and ranges as well in this project. And the final multifamily project I wanted to highlight was a renovation project. So not only do we focus on new construction, but we work with developers on rehab projects. This is the Cedarwood Apartments near 75th and Pacific Street. So originally these 5 buildings had no gas heat in them. And during the renovation project, we worked with the engineering firm and were able to get them to go with individual gas furnaces and meters at each of these buildings. Moving on to CNG. Some of you may have seen the new FCC trucks on the street. They initiated the city trash contract starting Monday of this week. So in total, they have 72 trucks, all running on CNG, operating throughout the city. Each truck is estimated to use approximately 10,000 gallons each year, and they have a private CNG station off North 16th Street. And to give a recap of where our CNG sales stand through 2020, we're projecting at the end of 2020, we will have sold 2.2 million gallons of CNG this year. Stark contrast to 2011 when we started this, when I think we sold just over 220,000 gallons total for the year. And so to give you some perspective, the sales for this year would make CNG our 7th largest gas customer on the system. And with FCC coming online, we're projecting sales in 2021 to be about 2.7 million, which would make CNG our 5th largest gas customer. And just a reminder, here's some of the partnerships that we have with local companies, and as well as the environmental benefits we've experienced by using CNG. So since 2011, we've displaced nearly 250,000 barrels of oil and CO2 emission reductions of nearly 23,000 tons.
Great job on CNG. You guys are doing an excellent job, management and marketing. Great job. You know, when you have an input like one of the largest customers, 5th or 7th, whatever you said, that's a huge impact. Good job.
Yes, thank you, Mike. The final area I want to talk about was the MSR survey. The district initiates a survey with our residential customers every 3 years. And so we wrapped that up this past October. We had 963 online respondents. And the survey goes over everything from gas appliances, their preferences, what they have in their houses. It also covers gas safety. And so some of the highlights from that result of the survey were natural gas continues to remain the dominant fuel source for furnaces and water heaters in the area. The second bullet point here, the 17% of customers who replaced a range or cooktop in the past year switched from electric to gas. So that was a nice bump we've seen. And gas fireplaces have become the predominant preference. We've seen wood fireplaces drop out as people rehab houses. They'll put gas inserts in. And then the primary focus for customers when purchasing appliances, obviously initial cost, energy efficiency, and operating costs are the main factors there.
Do we have any rebates for fireplace inserts?
No, we do not. So we had MSR give us results comparing this year to 2014. So 2014 data is the blue bar chart, and the 2020 data is the purple bar chart there. So as you can see, furnaces, water heaters remain strong. Fireplaces, we've seen a large increase there. The range in the oven, we still lag below 50% there, but we're staying steady. This outlines what customers thought were the most important factors when replacing an appliance. Again, operating cost and efficiency and the initial cost of the appliance are well at the top. One thing I wanted to point out here is I know there's a big push for fossil fuels and environmental benefits, but the customers if you look at that last bullet, or that last item there, good for the environment, only 3% of the customers considered that a major factor when choosing an appliance. This final slide discusses the electric heat pump ownership. So for the past 10 or 15 years, the district has focused on trying to combat heat pump infiltration within our service territory. And so as you can see those numbers, 18% of customers indicated they had one back in 2014. That number has now dropped down to just over 11%. We do have a program that we work with the local HVAC company that incentivizes them if they do a system replacement at a house, if they remove a heat pump, there's an incentive for them to do that. And so I think over the years it's worked out well for us. That's all I have. Do any of the board members have questions?
Jason, I think the gas, the dryer and the range rebate, as well as the rain sensor rebate, are really excellent programs. Are we doing enough to get the word out to people about those?
Yeah, it's been a struggle. We've had information on our website. We've done bill stuffers. And unfortunately, this past year, we were partnering at the home show to do a booth with the Furniture Mart and promoting those, and that was canceled, obviously, due to COVID. So
but that is a good idea.
Yeah,
that is a good idea.
And I've had some discussions with Stephanie Mueller. I want to get with her and see if there's some better ways we can promote that, because one of the MSR survey questions did ask about our rebates, and the majority of the customers weren't aware that we have that.
I'm afraid that's the truth, and the more that we can inform people, the better decisions they can make.
Yes, yeah, I agree. So we'll work on that for this next year.
Thank you.
What is the rebate for the dryer and rain sensors?
So
How much?
The dryer and the stove rebate is $200 per appliance, and then the rain sensor rebate is a $50 rebate to the customer, and those go as bill credits.
Yeah, those are applied towards your bill.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is fine. Which is fine.
This is Mark Doyle, President. We work on this and scratch our heads every year, and it never stops. But what the difficulty of a gas dryer or a gas range is, the electric hookup is fairly simple, but especially in the case of the dryer, it takes a little extra infrastructure in the laundry room in terms of a gas connection. As you know, if you have a gas dryer, you can't argue the economics of it, that the homeowner will save over time if you choose gas over electric, and probably has a better end product if you consider dried clothes an end product. But we continually try to work with the builders, and in the big box stores, when you go to buy a dryer, the sales personnel aren't showing you a gas dryer because it's harder to sell. So it's a more complex topic than just, it's better, it's cheaper. So we continue to look at our rebates and the cost of that infrastructure to pipe the laundry room in the first place. So thanks for the questions. And to prove that we work with builders closely, Jason showed you a couple of projects that might have been all electric had it not been working closely with the builders or developers to put all those gas meters in. You can't eliminate water or electricity, but you can eliminate the gas connection. So we work really hard to make sure that doesn't happen. But those are great questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Jason? Seeing none, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Good job. Mr. Bean, would you please discuss wage and or salary increases and ratifications?
Sure. Good morning. Bonnie Sabine, Vice President, Human Resources. I'll begin by providing a recap of employee counts for the end of November in 2019 and 2020. On November 30th, 2019, we had 810 regular full-time employees and 4 regular part-time employees. So we had 814 total regular employees. To end this November, there were 808 regular full-time employees and 4 regular part-time employees. So we ended with 812 regular employees. There were also 2 temporary part-time employees and 1 temporary full-time employee at the end of this November. And on to a review of jobs actively in various stages of the job placement process. We have 7 jobs where requisitions are routing through the approval process. We do not have any current posted jobs. We do have 1 prepped for posting. And there are 18 jobs that are currently in the application review or interview stages. We have 1 job that has a selected candidate and they are being hired next Monday. Job placements have certainly continued as responsibly as possible during this pandemic. We've discussed the impact of the pandemic on our personnel during some of our previous monthly meetings, and I would like to provide you with a brief update now. Since we last met, we nearly doubled our total positive case count. However, our recovered count has more than doubled. The difference in the total positive and the recovered count is the active cases that we are currently having and that are impacting our workforce. November brought not only an increase in positive case counts, but also an increase in the number of employees that were tested or quarantined due to exposure or symptoms. But the district remains responsive. Our incident team continues meeting daily. Communication continues to all employees through district email, through the MyMUD Connect intranet, through printed information, pamphlets, and directly through division supervisors to provide employees information about COVID-19 safety measures, resources, and benefits. Additionally, we have continued communications with Terry and Tom, our IBEW leadership. Employees are utilizing pandemic leave benefits available through the district and under the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act, among other benefits and approved absence days. A number of safety and health measures remain in place, and they will continue to do so throughout the pandemic. And those include the district face mask policy, accessible PPE and hand hygiene materials, increased disinfection processes, social distancing practices, reduced group gatherings and room occupancy, and single occupancy in district vehicles, among other things. The safety and well-being of our employees, their families, and our community is paramount. We recognize our talented and dedicated teams are critical in enabling our organization to consistently accomplish our mission and serve our customers. So that is a brief recap of employee counts, our job requisitions, jobs that are in the job placement process, and our continued response during this incredible time.
Thank you, Bonnie. I have a quick question. If an employee is tested positive, I assume we put them in quarantine, stay at home?
Yes, quarantine is when you are not positive. Isolation is when you become positive.
Okay, and if somebody is tested positive, do we do any contact tracing of other employees and require them to be tested as well?
Thank you very much, Director McGowan. That's a great question. When an employee reaches out and notifies that they have either had exposure or possible exposure, when they have symptoms, or maybe they're even just being tested because of a procedure or because they're going out of town to visit family and they want to know that they are negative, or not before they leave. When an employee makes that outreach, we do have a contact questionnaire that is completed. It's completed ahead of them being positive, unless their first contact to us is when they advise that they have tested positive, and then the questionnaire is completed at that time. So that contact questionnaire collect some information regarding places that they have been in the days prior to that report. That includes district facilities, district sites. It includes customer premises, if they were inside customer premises. It includes any employees that they have worked with within specific distances or for extended periods of time. It also includes any equipment or vehicles that they may have operated in. And that provides our response team, which includes facilities who organize cleaning with our disinfecting groups and cleaners. It includes transportation, who would be able to fog or disinfect vehicles or equipment. It includes some of our HR and safety teams. And so those questionnaires are completed as early as possible so that if an employee does test positive, we don't have to interrupt their recovery necessarily. We have the information in hand and we can begin screening employees if needed.
Great, sounds good. If an employee does test positive, is put into quarantine, I assume they have to have another test to be negative before we allow them back in the workplace?
Actually, we worked with a couple of physicians at the University of Nebraska Medical Center's biocontainment unit and Center for Global Health Security. And in meeting with them, they had advised that people can test positive for many weeks. However, as the CDC has advised, the isolation period after testing positive is really 14 days. They advised us to keep it simple, keep it at 14 days as long as the employee is symptom-free. So they are re-screened by our staff prior to their return date, their 14-day completion of their isolation period. If they are symptom-free, they are allowed to return, or if they have no significant symptoms, they are allowed to return.
And did I see that here, that yesterday or the day before the CDC reduced the quarantine from 14 down to 10 or 7 days?
They have offered a couple of alternative quarantine periods. There are some specific criteria around those. So we do have our group reviewing that. We have a draft. As of last night, I completed, and that'll be going to our group for review before we communicate that out. But there are some specific alternatives there, and the employee would have to have exposure only, no symptoms. They would have to be asymptomatic, and it would be reliant upon a negative test, or if no test, that's where the 10-day mark comes in rather than the 7. So we are looking at that and how we can incorporate that into our protocol.
Okay, thank you. You're right on top of it, Bonnie. Good job.
Hey, Bonnie.
A whole team doing this, but thank you. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Are we using the RVs that we purchased at Platte West?
Not at this time, we are not, but I know, I'm not sure if anybody else wants to comment on that. We certainly do have those available, but we are not using them at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Bonnie, it's Jim. Regarding the contact tracing process, if there were MUD employees exposed by a colleague, are those employees who are exposed, are they encouraged to go get testing? And are there vouchers available for employees to go get tested?
Thank you. That is a great question. So we do have some employees who we have very few that we have had to address that way in comparison to our total. But we do have a list of local testing areas or facilities, and most are no out-of-pocket cost for those employees. And we do refer them to get tested after they are screened. But there is one facility that does have better availability. They are open 7 days a week. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with appointments every 3 minutes. We have found that they are also doing more than one type of testing. And so that facility is being utilized, but they do charge an administrative fee. If we have an employee that has possible exposure to their coworker at work, then we are refunding that administrative fee for the employee to ensure that they get tested as soon as possible and get some answers.
How much is that administrative fee?
Is currently $49. It increased about 2 weeks ago.
Hey, Bonnie, do we let the employees go on company time to get tested?
Those that are being exposed to their own coworkers, we are sending them on district time. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And again, a lot of this has changed. The CDC has had a couple of language changes in close contact and in their quarantine recommendations since almost the middle of November. So we have been working those changes into some of our protocol, finalizing a larger communication. As I mentioned, that was wrapping up yesterday because of the newest language change. And we are working on a communication plan for that as we speak.
You know, about 2 weeks ago, my wife and I went to Oakview, in the state of Nebraska, testing, just to be tested. We didn't have any symptoms or anything. We just wanted to know. And we had an appointment at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. And we got the results, negative, thankfully, Wednesday morning through an email. I mean, it's less than a day. So it's amazing.
And we have certainly found that the times have varied. There are certainly some rapid testing locations in the area, as well as Test Nebraska, who continues to have 4 locations available with some limited times, you know, because they're not open as long, or and actually they were closed for Thanksgiving, which thank goodness for us was quiet. That was much needed, you know, break for all of our staff. But the result times have varied from 24 hours to sometimes 3 to 5 days. So, you know, we're doing our best to support the employees as they wait for some of these results.
What's the turnaround time for the $49 test?
About 30 minutes.
Oh, great.
Hey, Bonnie, I just want to commend you and your team. Being in the human resources field myself, it's been challenging for everybody, but as we've discussed in recent months, you've been presented with things, HR departments from around the country have been presented with things that we never could have conjured up 12 months ago. So there has been a lot of quick thinking and addressing concerns as they come up that, like I said, we never would have imagined. So I just want to commend you and your team for all the work you've been doing on behalf of the employees.
Thank you, Jim. Again, it's definitely a group effort, but we are, you know, we have one goal in mind, and that's to keep the employees safe and keep our operations running smoothly. So we're doing what we can.
You're doing a great job, and I also want to commend management, for all the management team for helping, because it's HR, they do a lot of work, but it's the whole team approach, and you guys are doing an awesome job. Thank you.
This is Mark. Thank you for those comments. We also want to pass on our compliments and let the board know that our employees are working real hard across top to bottom, front to back, to work together on this. This is one of those topics that we're opening the line with our employees. I don't know if it's as best we can, but we feel like it is, because you know, I don't have the perspectives of a working parent, father or mother with small children in school and what they're going through now. So we're, Bonnie, HR, all the department heads, along with all the employees, we're trying to share information and keep our ears open so we can learn from each other. This is one of those topics. We hosted a virtual seminar. I don't know, it might have been the week before last. and we had about 150 employees on a WebEx, and we only worked on 3 topics, and of course one of them was the pandemic, but the engagement with the employees is impressive because we're all in this together. So thank you for your comments. Very much appreciated, and we're going to keep at it. It's job one for sure.
Okay. So
Thank you, Bonnie. Would you like to discuss the 2020 bargaining unit wage reopener, please?
I will touch on both of the letters there, Chairperson Howard. So behind tab 12, you will find the wage and or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 2 employees this month. 2 OAC employees are being promoted due to job progression, so within their job family. We do have 1 new hire SPA that needs their salary ratified as well. That employee was hired in the engineering department. Are there any questions on that particular letter? Okay, and now I will catch up and we will get to tab 13. Behind tab 13 is the letter for the 2020 bargaining unit wage reopener recommendations. The district's collective bargaining agreement with the IBEW 1521 includes language that an annual wage reclassification will be conducted. The 2020 wage reopener process accomplishes this. The reopener committee, 13 meetings, addressing 30 employees, reviewing 11 jobs. The committee is recommending adjustments to 2 jobs affecting wages for 8 employees. The recommendations are outlined in the letter behind tab 13 and include the following jobs. Cashier 3 from the Customer Accounting Division, which was previously part of remittance processing at our downtown location. And Builder Services Clerk in the Marketing and Builder Services Division. I would like to take just a moment to recognize Terry Cole and Tom Todd from the IBEW 1521, as well as Gary Troutman, Ann Bozen, and Katie Pulte, our human resources team, for their efforts to lead this process. They were very efficient this year. We were completed in a timely manner, and I know that that's important to those who participate. And a thanks to all of the other employees and supervisors who participated as well. Any questions on those?
Bonnie, I have a, I don't know if I want to call it a task for you, but something to consider as you work on the bargaining unit proposals for the future. The MUD is not the same organization it was in 1880 when they initially put the pipes in the ground. They've moved on from being a male-focused, I hate to use these terms, but we're more encompassing. I think that would be polite to say. And we have many more women employed now. I don't know that MUD has really moved beyond the scope of men doing the work and women at home doing the housekeeping and taking care of the children. If you could look at the issue of sick leave in particular and how this has evolved over the years. We have many more women and many more women that are parenting working for MUD now. And I would really appreciate any thoughts you have or any way to advance that so that we're more inclusive and more, what would be the term? You're probably much better at this than I am, but more able to work with the needs of the employees. Good employees, we want to keep them and we want to be able to ensure that they have a family life as well. So if I can leave that task with you, I would really appreciate that.
Sure, you bet. And we consider the fact that we do have a lot of parents in the organization, both our men and our women. So that is something that remains on our minds, and I'll make note of it. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Let's move this.
Yeah, I would echo. Hello, sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair, but I'd throw in, you don't have to have little people. You could have old people
True.
As I'm a witness, and those can be even more challenging than little people where you can theoretically tell them what to do. So if maybe 2020 is offering us some creativity in our staffing and productivity, and that can help along those lines too. Thanks.
Thank you. Good feedback.
This is Mark Doyle, President. Thank you for those comments, Directors Howard and Cook. I was discussing the new world like we always do at home just yesterday, and it would have been difficult to imagine that MUD could move toward virtual working, and I understand we can't all work virtually. We have a field operation that can't, but back office can. This opens opportunity for those that have a more difficult time being in the office, whether disabled or anything else. So I'm thinking it is a bright spot in this situation that we should be able to look at work differently for not just those with disabilities that would have a hard time being in the office, but also for parents that have children and flexible work hours and call centers that are able to possibly get on the phones fully connected, fully secure after the children are in school, leave to get them, come back, get on, keep it open. So these possibilities are always there, but I think everyone's eyes are open more to how realistic it is to support the workplace for those that it isn't always as friendly to. And that's not even, there's a whole diversity and inclusion aspect too, but even just physical issues of getting in and out of a building could be overcome so much more easily now for the kind of work that can be done this way. So thanks for bringing that up. I feel like that's support for what we want to do, and we welcome all your input and suggestions, and as policymakers, that's music to my ears, because but again, it'd be hard to move our workforce this way had it not been for this difficult situation. It just would have been.
I like the way you're
proved it
thinking.
quickly.
I like the way you're thinking, Mark. I mean, who would have ever thought in 2020 we would have a pandemic and a woman vice president?
There you go. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'll stop there.
Thank
you for those comments and your presentation, Bonnie. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Bonnie? Then we will tell her thank you for the good work, and we will call Mr. Mendenhall, who will discuss settlement of workers' compensation claim.
Again, good morning, Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. Behind tab 14, you'll see a letter of recommendation regarding a settlement of a workers' compensation claim that's been pending before the Nebraska Workers' Compensation Court. Additional details were provided to you all in a confidential communication, I believe, earlier this week. And if there are no questions, thank you very much.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
This is Mike. On the agenda of the meeting, we have a closed session for litigation matters. Is this item, or is there another item that we're going to discuss later?
No, good. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. McGowan. That closed session item was more of a placeholder in the event that we needed to discuss this or any other litigation matters, of which we do have a few. After discussing with Mr. Doyle earlier this week, we've decided that we no longer feel it is necessary to go into closed session for today's meeting. Unless you all wish to, we can certainly work to arrange that, but at this point in time, that as a placeholder should be disregarded, and I believe the meeting can conclude when the chair adjourns it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mendenhall. This is a public hearing. The 2021 gas and water budget, Senior Vice President and Officer, along with the manager. Affairs, Geneva Patterson, will be providing the presentation. This will include a review of the proposed water rate increase, which will then be followed by a public comment period. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Geneva Patterson, Manager of Rates and Regulatory Affairs here at the district, and I will be presenting this year's rate proposal for the 2021 budget year for both gas and water. They are located behind tabs 15 and 16 in your binders. Beginning with the water company, this year's water budget contains a 4.35% increase to only the commodity component of water rates for all customer classes. For the average residential customer, this results in a 1% increase over last year's budget to their
I'm sorry,
annual
has
bill.
the sound cut out on this?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. This is Mark.
Okay.
I can hear.
Okay, great.
Something. Gwen, can you hear?
I will start at the beginning.
Sorry, Ms. Patterson.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
I'm muting.
This year's water budget contains a 4.35% increase to the commodity component of water rates for all customer classes. The average residential customer will have an impact of 1% to their annual, to their charges, which equates to $3.62 per year. Generally, when we propose a change to rates, we typically request a January implementation date. However, as we work through the current pandemic, this year's effective date we're requesting to be May 2nd, 2021. This deferred implementation allows us a period of time to prepare our customers for the changing rates. And again, that increase is only to the commodity component of water rates for operations. No change is being requested to the service charge or the infrastructure replacement components of water rates. In 2021, we will target 16 miles of infrastructure replacement, which is an increase over the 12.75 miles replaced in 2020. So with no increase to fund infrastructure replacement, the proposed increase generates $1.6 million to fund operations, which Joe Shafford will discuss in his presentation to follow. Thank you. This chart itemizes the various components of the average residential customer's budgeted bills for both 2020 and 2021 based on normal weather. The bar to the left represents their budgeted annual bill for 2020, while the bar on the right represents their budgeted annual bill for 2021. Just at the bottom of each bar, you will notice that we are projecting annual water usage to decrease slightly from 105 CCFs per year to 104. And we've mentioned for several years now that water usage is declining, and the downward trend continues as depicted here. Starting with the blue sections at the bottom and working our way to the top, we see that service charges in blue are and fixed water infrastructure replacement charges in orange are the same from year to year. The next section above the orange, the lighter orange section, represents the base commodity charge, where the aforementioned $3.62 a year increase will be seen. And our graph here is presented in whole dollars, so that $3.64 rounds to the $4 difference that you see. Above that, the yellow and gray sections respectively represent water infrastructure replacement component of the commodity charge and the 2% statutory requirement to municipalities. Both remain unchanged from one budget year to the next. Overall, the average residential customer's annual budgeted water bill is expected to increase from $379 in 2020 to $383 in 2021. Each year, the district participates in a national survey that is put on by the Memphis Light, Gas, and Water Company. They ask for participants from utilities across the country and then share the results. These are the results from this year's survey. The chart depicts water charges billed for 10 CCF of water at rates in effect in January 2020 for residential customers with a 5/8 inch water meter. The district is represented here by the red bar at $32.74. The green bar next to it represents what our placement would be, which would be the same placement if these proposed rates are approved and implemented as of May 2021. Now that also assumes that none of the other survey participants have rate increases. We don't have that information available, but under these assumptions, we maintain our standing at the 18th lowest out of the 40 participants, with 21 participants at higher rates than what the district has calculated. For our gas company, no increase is being requested for gas commodity charge, the gas service charge, or the gas infrastructure replacement charge. However, the average residential customer will see an increase of just over $20 per year from 2020 to 2021, and that is a result of increased peak shaving costs due to carrying costs on bond issuance, and we also anticipate a higher cost of gas. And speaking of the higher cost of gas, I just want to pause here and comment that following last year's presentation, we did have a customer write in and ask why we continue to project gas rates increasing when we know that gas rates are lower than they've been in years. And that's an excellent question. We did respond to that customer, but in case there are others who may have the same question, I just wanted to say that the budget presentation is from year to year. And so from 2020 to 2021, there is a slight increase in the cost of gas. But when you look back over a period of time and compare the cost of gas, those current gas rates are significantly lower than they were several years ago. So just for example, for 2020, the actual DMARC price is averaging $1.90 per decatherm. We are projecting that to increase to about $2.65 per decatherm, the DMARC price, in 2021. However, so that slight increase from $1.90 to $2.65 is the increase we're referring to in our budget presentation. But if you look back over the years, 2008, for example, that same DMARC price was as high as $7.57, and so that's what the customer was asking about. So I just wanted to make that clarification that we are talking about from one budget year to the next. And so again, we expect those pass-through costs to increase. However, we are not requesting any increase to the service charges or the infrastructure replacement charges on the gas side. The gas infrastructure replacement will be funded by a $28.9 million bond issue in 2021 for spending from 2021 through 2023 that exceeds revenue generated from gas infrastructure replacement. And so with the goal of replacing 40 miles per year, we are on target to complete the remaining 212 miles of cast iron replacement by 2027. With those increased pass-through costs, the average residential gas customer is expected to...
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I didn't realize it. I was talking to myself. Anyway, what you're saying, and I appreciate it very much, is that for the rate component that is controlled by MUD, by MUD's management, MUD employees working hard and saving all the money, that is not going to increase. And I think I'm going to ask you or Joe, We have not had an increase in the rate that is controlled by MUD since 2014, is that right?
That is absolutely correct. The component of rates that is controlled by MUD, we are not requesting any increase to, and that rate has not been increased since 2014.
And that's, to me, that I just want to say that's a reflection of the hard work, cost control, and efficiency of all the employees, and I think they're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Other point I want to make is that on the pass-through cost, you got the cost of gas and peak shaving bond issue, which is true. Isn't it also an increase in the Northern Natural Gas contract because of their settlement? Didn't we have a little bit of an increase up to the cap that we have?
In last year's budget, we did have an increase to the rates that were effective in 2020, but in 2021, with their rate settlement, we actually saw a slight decrease in that rate component. And so that decrease will also be passed on to the customers.
We had a slight decrease from what we had budgeted last year, anticipating a settlement?
The amount that the customers will pay, the $20 million, it's a $20 million cap, and it was just a few $1,000s upon settlement that we settled on. And so you'll see in the top portion of the bar graph, the change was so minimal that it's pretty much the same as last year. It's the top layer, the purple and the bars presented.
Okay, my last question then would be that for 2020 budget, we assumed the $20 million cap essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's
okay.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we do anticipate the overall charge for the average residential gas customer to increase from 2020's $576 budgeted amount to a $597 annual amount for 2021. And this itemized comparison, starting at the bottom again, you'll see the service charges in blue, the gas infrastructure replacement charges in orange, and the gray section, the 2% statutory requirement. Those amounts remain unchanged from one budget year to the next. The change is reflected in the more gold section, which represents those pass-through costs that we discussed, and then the base commodity and the demand charges are essentially the same. So again, our participation in the Memphis Light Gas and Water's National Comparison Survey on the gas side is shown here. Bills were calculated using rates in effect as of January 2020 for 200 CCFs of gas. And while we are not the lowest ranked in this survey, our placement among our participating peers is very positive, and we are the 4th lowest of the 40 participants. The red bar represents bill charges using January 2020's gas rates, and the green bar represents charges using the projected gas rates for 2021. And again, that assumes no other changes to the other participants' data. And then our final slide combines the 2021 gas and water budget proposals, showing the impact to the average residential customer who uses both gas and water. The combined gas and water charges are projected to increase from 2020's budget by $24.57 annually, which rounds to the $25 presented on the slide, or 2.6%. And that concludes my rate presentation for the 2021 budget year. I'm happy to take any additional questions at this time if there are any.
Well, the only other thing I'll say it now, and I know Joe's heard me say this too, that when we go out with the public, I don't know if the World Herald will cover this or issue a press release or talk to the World Herald, but I think we need to make a point that first of all, we're not increasing the water because of the pandemic. We need to have a rate increase, but we're deferring it to May, which is a good point for the public to understand. Secondly, we're not increasing our commodity rates that are controlled by MUD. We haven't since 2014. The only increase are the ones that are pass-through costs that, that gas costs and things that we are out of our control that we just pass through. And that's why your cost is going up from 955 to 980. Has nothing to do with what MED has the control of.
That is correct. Thank you. And now I'll turn the floor over to Joe Shafford, who will continue the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get the mics moved up a little bit. Thank you, Geneva. Joe Shafford, I serve as the Chief Financial Officer for the district. Get the slide advanced here. Not that way. What have I been doing wrong? There it is. Garrett is close to me because I'll likely make a mistake, so he may be popping up here. So the first slide I wanted to talk about, just to give you a sense for the magnitude of the spend we're talking about between the gas and the water departments. So you can see combined, we're looking at a projected spend of $410.4 million. And this includes everything except for debt service costs that equal another $28.2 million on top of this. So just a couple of comments on the various slices of the pie that you see here. So the light blue slice is the natural gas purchase cost, the pass-through that Director McGowan was just talking about. So that's 26% of this total spend, or $107.2 million. But to the control comment, I would say we don't have control over the cost of the gas, but we make a concerted effort to lower the cost of this gas via the prepaid gas purchase contracts that both CPEP is engaged with, as well as other ones that we participate in, namely TIAC, Peak, and Black Belt, in addition to CPEP deals. Those efforts that are controlled and directed by Jim Knight, Dave Bellairs, and Pat Brennan and the Gas Acquisitions Group will save our customers $3 million in 2021, which I think is significant. The other comment I would make is, though we're looking just at 2021 in terms of the board approving a budget, we always look at a 5-year view when we do this exercise, just given the need to plan when you run a business like this. So for the 21 through 25 period, these discounts in these prepaid gas deals will total nearly $46 million over the 5-year period. So a significant effort is made to control and minimize these costs, and I think is yet another contributor to why we rank the way we do in these surveys. The next slice, payroll and benefit costs, 33%. That little slice that you see, the dotted line, is indicating that we perform some of our own work. And so as not to double count that means that part of that payroll is part of the capital that we build. That payroll and benefit slice is equal to $132.8 million, of which about $18.9 million gets capitalized to these costs. Other O&M are things like consulting and professional fees, the electricity used at the water plants, the chemicals at the water plants, et cetera. And then you see the water and the gas capital. So for the water department, it's a total of $85.1 million, of which 9.8 is performed by our own crews. On gas, the total is $79.4 million, of which 9.1 million is performed by our own crews. So that gives you a sense for the total spend for the district. The other item of note is that a portion of both water and gas capital will be funded by bond offerings, and that'll become clearer as we move along here. So in terms of expense assumptions that are, I'll say, shared or common to both the gas and the water department, the budget reflects a 2.25% wage increase for both SPA and OAC employees, and you can see the effective date, March 1 and April 1, respectively. These are raises that are depicted in the labor agreement, which extends through March 31st of 2023. The other slide or the other point I should say that I think is very relevant on this slide is the reflection of full funding of promises to employees in terms of pension and OPEB or retiree medical funding. The actuaries every year determine an actuarial determined contribution. Obviously, when you're doing a budget, you have to estimate some, but we loop them into the process and use the guidelines that they provide into the past, and you see that the budget includes $11.6 million for pension and $14.7 million for OPEB. The other comment relative to pension that affects the district's contribution is the existing labor agreement shows a slightly increasing portion of pension contributions being made by employees. So from 20 to 21, that increase was from 7.5% of the check or the wages for the employees to 8%. So that serves to mitigate or lessen a little bit the district's contribution. The other comment I think that's important to note relative to OPEB, the board will recall that we established the OPEB trust in late 2015. Prior to that time, the OPEB contributions were strictly the retiree medical claims as they were incurred. And this was a significant enhancement to this commitment to keep promises to employees when we put the OPEB trust in place. And in fact, the contribution started in 2016. If you reflect the budgeted 2021 contribution, we will have contributed $54.6 million to the trust in addition to paying the claims as they occur. And I think the board is to be commended for that change. This was a cost that wasn't reflected in our rate structure in the past, and it is now, and it's absolutely the right thing to do in terms of keeping promises to employees.
And Joe, would you repeat that number? If you include the 2021 budget, how much have we contributed?
$54.6 million to the trust, and we assume another about $24 million for claims over that same period of time.
Okay,
So
good. And this is true. I think that right now we're still paying pay as you go. We're not taking any funds out of the trust to pay any claims at this point.
That's correct. That's correct. And until we get that trust, and I don't know that there's a magical number, Director McGowan, but we're going to continue to build on that trust value and continue to use pay-as-you-go for the retiree claims, at least in the near term.
Yep, thank you. And the other thing I was going to say is, when we had our preliminary discussions this past week or so, we did talk about our targeted rate of return going from 6.9 to 6.8%. I take it we've dropped that idea. We're going to keep it at 6.9.
We are. We took your comments. We had reflected it the other way to begin with, and we effectively lessened the contribution a little bit in light of the challenges to cash flow with the pandemic and what have you. So we're continuing to be on that topic. The assumed rate of return is 6.9% in this budget, but that's a topic that will remain under review.
Thank you.
Sure. So some of this is just a brief recap of what Geneva shared previously, but as you can see, the budget contains a 1% increase to the average residential customer effective May 1 of 2021. We will be using the increase to fund increased operating costs with none of it going to fund infrastructure. And I think it's important to point out that as you manage cash for the district, on the water side, we effectively maintain two buckets of unrestricted cash. One bucket I would call is for normal operations, and the second bucket is reserved for water main infrastructure replacement. And the board is aware we did a jump start to that rate component with increases in January and July of, July of 19, January of 20 to jump start that process. There are no increases in the 21 budget for the infrastructure component of rates. You will also note that the budget reflects a $9.1 million spend down of unrestricted cash. And the point to make here is that we don't build cash with the objective of necessarily maximizing cash balances. Instead, we focus on cash management from a long-term perspective to retain sufficient liquidity for any number of circumstances that can arise. Obviously, we're experiencing an unforeseen circumstance of a lifetime with the pandemic, and we're very thankful that we entered the pandemic in a very strong financial position, but that was not by accident. That's part of the way you manage long-term cash flow. The other reason it's important is to minimize borrowing costs, i.e. the interest rate on bond issuances. I'm going to give some more statistics on that in just a second. And then finally, when you issue bonds, there are debt covenant requirements that relate to your ability or your margin of safety in terms of covering principal and interest payments. You'll also see a future slide that references these covenants. Finally, we're assuming 0.8% customer growth. That's about what we've experienced in the past. In fact, we're running slightly north of that number this year. The 0.8% customer growth would translate to about 1,745 customers. Through October of 20, we've actually added slightly more than that. So on the, on the expenditure side, from what the board saw in November, there is a $1.5 million reduction yet to be found in capital. I will talk about plans for future years in just a moment. So you can see that capital expenditures are budgeted at $85.1 million, which is $12.6 million higher than the 2020 budget. Two significant contributors or categories of this increase. Water mains are up by $9.2 million. And of that $9.2 million, $3 million relates to the subdivision types of mains, which are paid for by developers. And another $4.5 million relates to pioneer mains, which tend to be the approach mains to subdivisions. A good portion of pioneer mains are paid for by developers as well. And then another significant source of increase is the West Dodge Pump Station. We have $6.6 million in the budget, which is up by $6.1 million from the prior budget. That project should be completed in 2022. There is another $1 million in 2022 to complete the West Dodge Pump Station. In terms of commenting on reductions to future years, again, we have to take a long-term view as you manage the district and figure out how to finance various initiatives. So from what the board saw in November, in 2021, we're reducing it by the $1.5 million that I mentioned. And over the 22 through 25 period, we're reducing it by another $14.6 million in total. Of that amount, $9.6 million relates to a reduction in planned water infrastructure replacement main spending in 24 and 25. But I do want to make a couple comments on that topic. We have not given up on ramping up to 25 miles of replacement, which is what the budget assumptions were when we presented in November. As a bit of a backdrop, when we put that new rate component in place, we did a 40-year cash flow model that laid out the economics of ramping up water infrastructure main replacement. That model assumed in the relative near term a 30% reduction in cost per mile to install these. And that assumption was based on new installation techniques like structural lining, like pipe bursting, new materials, the use of plastics and what have you. And to this point, we're not seeing that reduction. In retrospect, that assumption was probably rather aggressive. But so despite the fact that money has been removed, it is not something in terms of mileage that we've given up on. We're trying to figure out how to become more efficient in this. It remains a very important topic. We have a new rate component directed at that, and we're very mindful of that. And even with that cut, the ramp up is still pretty significant. So the dollars still reflect a ramp up from 16 miles to 20 miles, whereas the November presentation showed 25. When I'm standing in front of you next year, it may well be back to 25, and we'll have figured out how to make the math work. Right now, the numbers don't work, but it's a work in process. The other thing that will help, if we continue to be successful spending less money repairing water main breaks and instead spending it on main replacement, of course you can devote those dollars to water mains. We just need more experience. And we've got things in place that we're working on with listening devices, with the hydraulic model, with the way we operate the system. So there's a lot of things in process, but right now, where we're at, the numbers just didn't support the 25 miles.
Joe, I appreciate that explanation. And I know everyone at the district is laser focused on getting that water infrastructure ramped up. And I know it'll be addressed every year. So that is obviously an important priority for the board and for the district as a whole. So I appreciate your explanation on that and look forward to finding those efficiencies that'll help us to continue to ramp up to the 25 miles a year.
Good. Thank you, Director Begley. So then moving on to the revenue expense statement for the Water Operations Department, what we're showing here is the 2020 projection as well as the 2021 budget. You can see with the circled numbers at the bottom that the net income actually drops by $9.6 million. I'll talk about the significant contributors to this. You can see that total revenue drops by $1.4 million. So despite a rate increase or a proposed rate increase that raises $1.6 million, we had significant usage in 2020 over budget given how dry it was in 2020. In fact, through October, precipitation was 48% below normal, which drove volumes to be 11.2% higher than budget. We always assume normal usage, of course, in a budget, because normal usage is an average of extremes in this area. But in any event, an assumption of return to normal results in a reduction in revenue of $3.5 million. So that more than offsets the effect of the rate increase. The other operating increase of $0.3 million, though it's not significant, this is where things like turn-on charges, late payment fees, and of that nature are captured. And as the board is aware, one of the things that we did during the pandemic was suspend late payment and turn-on charges, late payment fees and turn-on charges for a period of time. We're assuming those have been restored, so we'll likely see a slight uptick in revenue. On the expense side, you can see that the biggest increase is in operating and maintenance. That's basically where you capture the people and the operating costs of the business, as the name implies. So of that $5.6 million, we are projecting wages and benefits from a consolidated basis between water and gas combined to go up by about $5.9 million. And that's driven both by the raise assumptions that I showed on the previous slide, as well as an assumption of 18 new hires during 2021. So keeping in mind we capitalized some of these wage increases, the net to expense consolidated is about $5 million, and roughly it's split half and half, so 2.5 to gas and 2.5 to water. So 2.5 of that 5.6 relates to wages and benefits. There are a couple of other professional fees / consulting engagements that are contributing to the increase. Namely, there's a water master plan that's being developed. We have $800,000 in the budget for that. And then there's also a Platte South capital improvement plan. We have another $800,000 in budget for that. So together those total 1.6. So between the wages and benefits and those consulting engagements, that's $4.1 million, and the rest is kind of spread throughout many areas. You see a topside budget adjustment of $0.8 million. We talked about an adjustment on the capital side. We also have a slight adjustment on the expense side, and that's basically 1% of O&M. That has not been found yet. It will likely be in the form of either not hiring a vacancy or not hiring one of these new hires, because the vast majority of costs are people, of course. So the management team's aware of this goal. We just need to find it. We are confident that we can. Depreciation and amortization is up by $2 million. That tracks with the fact that capital is up. We have assumed bond issuances. So we always assume a 1% of offering price as a bond issuance cost. Interest expense will go up along with the bonds increasing. And then other is the statutory payments to the 2% statutory payments that Geneva referenced. Those are virtually unchanged. So moving to cash flow. So we're projecting that we end 2020 with unrestricted cash of $87 million, or 392 days cash on hand. And then you can see the things that add to cash and then the things that decrement to cash. So the greens are adds. So net income of $26.3 million. Depreciation and amortization is a non-cash expense that's included in the derivation of net income, so you have that back. Debt issuance costs are non-operating. Again, this is focusing on operating unrestricted cash. Contributions are the payments we get from developers for pioneer mains and mains within subdivisions. A decrement is capital expenditures. That's actually capital expenditures of $85.1 million, less than amount funded by bonds, which is assumed to be $22.6 million, which is how you net down to $62.5 million. We have debt service costs. These are just principal payments here because the interest is captured when you calculate net income. So the $14.9 million is principal payments. And you exit the year with $77.9 million, that $9.1 million cash spend down that I talked about, or 336 days. I do want to make a couple comments on, I'll say, our liquidity targets, which are measured in terms of days cash on hand. During October, the board will recall that I sent out a report that was produced by Moody's Investors Services that was the outcome of a credit surveillance exercise. They do that virtually every year. And I was pleased that even in the pandemic, we retained our AA2 credit rating, which is the third highest that's available. But during this exercise, we learned that Moody's has now issued guidance on a liquidity target that's necessary to earn the top credit rating. And that target is 250 days cash on hand. In light of our reliance on debt offerings, I believe it's prudent to change our internal liquidity goals from the current 180 days to 250 days. And you can see we do meet those requirements. And in the 5-year window, though I'm not presenting it today, we continue to meet those targets. But a couple of comments on that in terms of the benefits that you derive by these strong credit ratings. Again, I talked about liquidity and its importance in preparing for unforeseen events like a pandemic, but also compliance with debt covenants. And then finally, the reduced borrowing costs that this can result in or does result in. So in terms of quantifying what effect a credit rating has on your interest rate, I reached out to Piper Sandler, and they serve as a financial advisor when we do bond issuances. And what they said is each change in a credit rating, each notch change, results in about a 5 to 10 basis points difference in an interest rate. So 1% equals 100 basis points, and you think, well, 5 to 10 doesn't seem very significant. And at face value, it may not seem like it, but between gas and water, this budget includes, over the 5-year period, issuing over $200 million in bonds. So that results in savings of between $1.2 million and $2.4 million in interest costs. So it's significant, and yet another reason to work on enhanced liquidity.
Now, Joe, you said something, you said our current goal is 180 days. That's what we've always been focused on.
That's right.
You say you think we should change it to 250.
Yes.
I fully agree. I think we should, to make sure that we maintain our bond ratings and everything. Does that require any approval by the board, or is that a management discretion, changing it from 180 to 250, or do we have to take formal action and adopt that?
I'm going to have Mr. Mendenhall step to the mic, but Director McGowan is asking whether or not the board would have to.
Joe, Mark Doyle, President, I'd like to say a couple comments before Mark comes up. That's a great question. We, up until a few years back, maybe 5, we didn't even have a goal. So one of the 5 pillars that we developed a few years back when we started talking about performance indicators and key performance indicators was cash on hand. And we came up with 180 days in somewhat of an arbitrary way, but I wouldn't say that would be fair to say that. We looked across the industry and tried to determine what's fair and what we need. So I'll go ahead and let Mark take that, but I did want to remind the board that I remember not too long back when we didn't even have an internal goal. Joe, agree?
Yeah, absolutely. When I believe when Deb Schneider came on as CFO, there was no goal in place, and I think everyone is aware liquidity has improved dramatically given the focus and emphasis on this topic. So yeah, that's when we put the goal in place. And part of it was, 180 days is 6 months. We were coming from a place that was well below that on both sides of the business. And then the credit rating agencies have always been somewhat, evasive is the wrong word. It was less the black and white than this new guidance we've received. And we thought with guidance, we should be mindful of that because we rely on annual upgrades and we do bond offerings frequently. So I will let Mr. Mendenhall step up on the question.
Before you do that, Joe, I'd like to say, Deb Schneider came on board. We didn't have a goal. When I was first on the board in 2010, my first time on the board, one of the first questions I asked, I think it was the chief financial officer before Deb. He was the attorney that retired. Anyway, I asked, what is our cash on hand? How much cash do we have on hand? And he said, none. We don't have any cash on hand. I said, you got to be kidding me. How do we plan for contingencies and everything? So then when Deb got on board, on the board as the chief financial officer, the whole board pushed her to focus on getting cash on hand and build up that cash reserve, which we have done a great job of over the years. And thankfully, we had it on hand when we hit this pandemic to help us get through it. So that shows why you need cash on hand.
And along those same lines, sorry, Mark Doyle, Mr. McGowan, and the rest of the board, we don't ever want to miss the opportunity to thank you for your support because these things are difficult to start building. Mr. Schaffert talked a few minutes ago about our OPEB funding. That took a deliberate effort by management and this board to start funding that, our other post-employment benefits. And that's a big deal. And I hope all our employees will come to appreciate that someday, that we're doing that. We were just saying we need to fund it someday. So we want to thank you for your support on that also. It's the same type of a topic. Go ahead, Mark.
And I tease people and I say, you know, even back then I said, even Warren Buffett always has cash on hand. Now I think his cash on hand is like, I don't know, 120, 140 billion dollars. So he knows how to run a business.
And Mark Mendenhall, before you start, you're getting interrupted like 28 times here. Sorry, man. Regarding OPEB, I know that Joe Schaffert worked very closely with our former colleague Steve Patterson on that. So I always want to give credit to Mr. Patterson because he took a lot of time and a lot of thought to get that established with you, Joe. So thanks, Steve Patterson and Joe.
I think that's a great point, and he also helped dramatically, I would say, with the discipline of the way we manage those trust funds. So that's a great comment.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to interrupt Mark Mendenhall by suggesting that AAA credit ratings or whatever thing we're going to get and whatever benefit we get from having cash on hand, I want us to think about the human cost of that, potential human cost in terms of innovation, in terms of being able to recruit competitively wherever we need to ensure diverse and inclusive leadership. Because another thing that 2020 has taught us is that, okay, the basics of running an organization are the same, but we're going to have to be a lot more nimble and innovative going forward, whatever kind of business or organization we're running. So I wanted to add that. Who else wants to interrupt Mark Mendenhall before he tells us whether or not? Okay, I'm going to go back on mute.
This is hard for an attorney.
Mark Mendenhall, General Counsel, Senior Vice President. To answer your question, Director McGowan, I believe the board certainly does have the authority to direct management one way or another with respect to liquidity or cash on hand. I would say that it is doing so by approving this budget process, which includes this as one of the elements amongst the many that Mr. Schaffert is going over. That being said, if the board as a group or as a quorum would like to say, okay, well, 250 days, we just think that that's insufficient. We'd like to have it at 300, or we think 250 days is too much. We'd like to have it at 180. It could direct management to handle that component of the budget differently. I believe, though, that by approving the budget as recommended by management and in Mr. Schaffert's presentation, it is approving this 250-day, I guess, benchmark, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And then since I would be the one making the recommendation for the AF&E and our committee, I appreciate that. That helps me. Another question I have is to Joe. If we made a resolution today to target 250 days cash on hand, a resolution, would that help show the credit agencies our commitment to keeping cash at 250 days and keeping cash on hand? If we made a formal resolution to go to 250, yeah.
You know, good question. My answer is going to sound like a cop-out. There are so many criteria they use. I think we share with them our 5-year budget view every year in affiliation with surveillance exercises. And I wouldn't say it's required, but it certainly couldn't hurt. I don't know. I think Mark Mendenhall explained it well in that effectively by approving this budget, and we make it very clear in this budget what our goals are relative to 250 days cash on hand, that the board, by virtue of approving that, is in agreement with that with management recommendation.
Okay.
I'm not in agreement with that. just to say it out loud in a public hearing, because I want to know what the world is between 250 and 180. I want to know that down the line, when all of a sudden this criteria, which you made up, all of a sudden it becomes about driving toward that as opposed to other things that we need to do to be future oriented. So I don't know about what the resolution process is. I would not vote in support of a resolution that formalized the number 250 without some conversation about that. And if the approving this is this whole budget includes tacit approval of 250, I just need it to be on the record that I down the line when we start talking about, when we forget there's a pandemic and we start talking about, well, we didn't meet 250, folks are going to act like that's a real thing when it was a made up thing. And we're seeking to hit it in hopes that the credit rating agencies will look upon us in a more favorable light, when Mr. Shafford has said a couple of times that they've got lots of different factors that go into our credit rating. So I've said that out loud, and I don't know if anybody else has any other opinions.
Well, Tanya, at this point, you're not objecting to what's management's proposed in the budget as far as cash on hand for 2020.
No, it's just the action or the tacit approval that this new number,
okay,
is
so you just don't,
the gold standard is what we're driving for, because I don't think it's kind of real enough to be driving for it. And you said we had cash on hand for a pandemic. That's great, and I like planning ahead, and I believe people should have cash in their very own accounts. My challenge is that, yes, we did it, great, and we had a pandemic that we hopefully won't have for another 110 years. So we were in a good spot, and what I'm saying is that I don't want that to be our only thing we're living for.
So you're not opposed to right now, like what Joe's proposing in the budget for cash on hand for 2020, the budget, you just don't want to formalize the 250.
Right, or have us just forget that it was an arbitrary thing to even have the 180. Because I've noticed how these conversations happen. It's like that game of telephone. It's not real, and then you keep talking about it as if it's real, and then down the line, we'll be having a conversation about making some sacrifice to be able to meet this, even if it's 180 or 250. I want us to remember that we made it up, and good for us, we met it and exceeded it. And B, the credit rating agencies are looking at lots of different factors in addition to cash on hand. And of course, I don't know what those are, but that's the point I want to make clear.
Okay. So moving to the next slide.
So this Joe?
Yes.
This is Mark Doyle. Yeah, great discussion. My preference would be that we don't formalize it. We brought this as an item for awareness, and the very nature of liquidity or cash on hand is that you might spend it down. So tacit approval may put us in a position that we don't want to be in. There are times where we would want to spend it down, as Director Cook mentioned, a pandemic, for example. We will take these comments into consideration and look at it exactly that way. We understand that's one criteria, not all criteria for credit rating, but if we feel that it isn't appropriate and it's too much, we'll be the first to react to that. I know I will be. I've sat through zero cash on hand, and frankly, years ago, we got to a point in the gas department where the board thought it was too much cash on hand. It wasn't, but at the time, we weren't even aware of what cash on hand a gas utility or a public water and gas utility needed or didn't need. And we gave some of it back, and management didn't like that, but we weren't educated. So what I hear here is a really good thing, because we're all aware of it and we can watch it and we can offer comments together and decide what's too much and what's not enough. So thank you. But I agree, we don't need tacit approval. It's in the budget and you're aware that we're talking about it. So sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Thank you.
No, no problem. Mark still holds the record for being interrupted the most, so I'm good. So this slide presents a 5-year look at what the bonded debt will be on the water side, and this goes to the importance of maintaining strong credit ratings. You can see this reflects assumed debt levels at the end of each year. So you can see with the assumed $65.1 million bond issuance in 2021, the reason it's 63.9 is we assume there's some principal pay down in December. So that becomes 263.4. The red little blip in 2025, I would call as a placeholder. That will be a different number likely, because it'll be a 3-year number for the ongoing Florence, as well as at that time Platte South capital improvement plan. That just reflects spending in that year for those two improvement plan projects. The other thing of note, though, as time goes on, you know, when we do the budget, you have to draw a line in the sand and use the best estimates you have to derive what borrowing you're going to need. As the Florence capital improvement plan is developed, and then you have design work that happens in affiliation with some of these projects, or all of the projects, you'll get a much better feel for what the project should cost to construct. So the amount of debt will be adjusted accordingly as we get nearer that time. I mentioned debt covenants you enter into when you do a bond offering, and you can see the 1.2 times, it's effectively, you're telling the bondholders, I'm generating enough cash to make certain to you that I can make principal and interest payments. And Mr. Doyle talked about his history on the board, and I know Director McGowan will recall this. When those periods of low cash were occurring, we actually did have bonds outstanding, and the covenants were not being met. So that's why it's important to approach this rigorously in terms of liquidity. And to Director Cook's comments, I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule for virtually any company, but every company I've worked for in my nearly 40 years of doing this has liquidity targets, but they are targets. So I would concur that you don't want to box yourself in with a lot of rigidity around those targets. But I think having a common goal and a target is important as you look for ways to run and finance a business. So just a couple of additional comments on that. And of course, when you have debt outstanding, you have to pay interest and principal payments. So here you see the principal and interest payments to service all that debt we just looked at. And the thing that's important about debt is it's a great strategy, I believe, to spread the cost of infrastructure type investment to beyond the current generation of ratepayers. So these are 20-year bonds that we typically issue, which means you'll have 20 years with the ratepayers to contribute to the cost of these improvements. And I think it's important you do that with large spend. So that's the reason for the bonding strategy that we use. Flipping to the gas side of the business, Geneva talked about there being no increase to the margin commodity component. Hasn't been since 2014 like we talked about, and we talked also about the pass-through costs. The other statistic I thought was interesting, Geneva talked about some costs at DMARC, which is a point in northern Kansas on Northern Natural Gas's system where gas pricing is made available. The thing that I did is what's really relatable to me is how we present what we expect gas costs to be for the average residential customer each year. So I joined the district in January of 2013. So the first budget I worked on was in 2014. That budget included a slide that showed 2013 actual and 2014 budget. The 2013 actual was $622, and the 2014 budget was $636. The 2021 number we're talking about is $597. So I'm not insensitive to the fact that between 20 and 21 there's an increase, but I think it's important to maintain the perspective that certainly the long-term trajectory is downward given the improved supply position we've enjoyed over the last many, many years. On the expenditure side, there is no change.
Yes. One question, your third bullet there, 0.8% customer growth.
Yes.
assumed. That's customer growth. On the revenues, is how much is CNG gone up in there to, you say customer growth, how much of that is related to CNG, or is that just customer growth? Is it not total revenue?
That's more customer growth, Director McGowan. So that would equate to 1,862 customers. The vast majority of our customers, of course, are residential customers. The thing that's hard about CNG right now is the sales kind of get blended into, I'll say, the classification of customers like commercial and industrial. And in fact, when we were preparing for this, I had a conversation with Mark Myers, and we're going to start footnoting in 2021, or try to, what the CNG sales are that are embedded in the various customer types, just to bring additional focus and attention to that, very important growing market.
Well, I know in the October monthly report that the latest one sent out, October of this year was the highest revenue month for CNG in our company's history. And that didn't even include the CNG revenues that we will get from the city trash contract that started on November 30th. So I'm just kind of curious, and you don't have to, if you can get it for me sometime, I'd like to know what our CNG revenues are year to date, so to speak, and how much revenue we anticipate for 2021.
We will work on assembling that.
Thank you.
So moving to the expenditure side of this slide, again, capital is unchanged on the gas side. The capital of $79.4 million is $17.1 million higher than the budget, as you can see. There's a bond issuance assumed for the LNG plant project that Mr. Knight discussed a couple board meetings ago. Again, to the sizing of the bond issue comment, we should get a lot more clarity as design work gets underway for that project, so that bond amount will very likely change. We hope it goes down, but in any event, we'll be refining that number. And then again, we talked about the accelerated rate of gas infrastructure replacement. There's a bond to cover the deficiency between the revenue raised from the rate component and the spend. Absent that bond offering, as you can see, $28.9 million. So effectively, each year we're spending nearly $10 million more than we bring in revenue. That's the simple math on that. So looking at revenue expense for the gas side, you can see net income of $26 million drops to 17.4. I'll talk about some components. The most relevant thing to look at on the gas side is net revenue, because the cost of gas is a pass-through, so more cost of gas means more revenue. So on the...
I guess, Joe, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but as follow-up to my question earlier about CNG, you see the revenue going up by $20 million. I guess my question that I want to see some number, how much of that $20 million increase is related to compressed natural gas sales?
Yeah, and we will definitely size that for you, Director McGowan. I don't have it with me, but we can get that.
Thank you.
You bet. So again, in terms of explaining that, like we said, the cost of gas is a pass-through, so you wouldn't expect there to be any change in net revenue because of that, and there isn't because of that, but there are a couple of things that drive that drop. There is a decrease in CPEP rebates retained by MUD between years. That drops by about $2.8 million between 2020 and 2021. The other thing that occurred in 2020 where volumes were higher than normal, or higher than budget, I should say, by about 7.1%. Dropping to normal drops revenue another $500,000. And then there's an offsetting increase for the bond carrying costs. So that carrying cost is recovered in revenue, and the costs are basically on the capital side and on the bond carrying costs that you see down in the expense side and cash flow side subsequently. Drop into expense, O&M goes up by less on the gas side, $2.9 million. The vast majority of that is gas's share of that aforementioned $5 million increase to payroll and benefits. So that's virtually all of the $2.9 million. Depreciation tracks with capital being up. We have bond issuance costs of assumed to be about $1 million on bond issuance of just shy of $100 million assumed for 2021. Interest expense, of course, tracks with the increase in bond offerings. And then other net is the 2% statutory payment. Since revenues are up, even though margins are down, there will be an increase in the 2% in lieu of payment we make to the municipalities. So that's the explanation for the income statement side. From a cash flow perspective, is there a question? Okay. From a cash flow perspective, we start the year at 362 days cash on hand, or 138.8 million in cash, and then you can see the items that increase and then decrement that. On the capital side, the capital is actually 79.4 million in total. The difference between that and 37.2 is the amount of bond financing assumed. And then you see debt service and other miscellaneous. The other miscellaneous is we're projecting a slight uptick on spending on gas that is stored in inventory. With the increase in cost of natural gas, the cost of the gas in inventory will go up as well. Then you see the debt outstanding on for the gas department. Again, grows dramatically with the issuance of the assumed issuance of the LNG bond, as well as the 28.3 million gas infrastructure replacement bond. And then you can see another assumed gas infrastructure replacement bond in 2024, that green slice, and then another little slice in 2025 to finish the LNG project. Again, these things need to be refined, and they will be as estimates get better, but those are the assumptions that we kind of drew a line in the sand for developing the budget. And then finally, we have the associated debt service cost or requirements on the gas side. And you can see they grow from 5.6 million in 2021 to 8.8 in 2022. The reason they change so much between 21 and 22 is not an additional bond offering, but rather the bonds are assumed to be issued mid-year. So you only have a half year's worth of carrying costs in 2021, and then you have a full year in 2022. A couple other comments about different things in the tab. So tab 15 also contains a resolution related to approval and adoption of the 2021 budget. Tab 16 contains a letter discussing the proposed water rate increase, as well as an accompanying resolution. So that's the extent of my comments. Are there any further questions? So before I vacate the podium, I want to give a special thanks to Mark Meyer, Stephanie Lemons, and Brandon Meisinger. There is a lot of work that goes on with assembling a budget. And obviously a special thanks to my colleagues. This is an exercise that requires a lot of time and a lot of buy-in, and we've got some targeted reductions that remain to be found. But just like my colleagues always do, I think we're in this as a team. We approach the pandemic as a team, we approach running the district as a team, and we approach developing budgets as a team. So that's the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. As always, I'm so impressed by your knowledge and understanding of these things. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? We'll now open the discussion up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who has any comments to share? And if so, please step up to the podium and state your name and address.
And Gwen, we do have one gentleman making his way down.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that.
Renato Claxton. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for attending.
Yes. I'm an employee at MUD. And I've been making some kind of appointments to get upstairs to HR with Annie Bozy something. And we had a couple appointments, but the last one we had was, when I got there, she said there was Mendenhoff coming and Bonnie. I don't understand this, but my point is that I kind of felt threatened, humiliated, because my point was coming up there was my retirement. But I don't know if things changed or is this a new norm for what we do. But as I say again, I felt threatened and I felt humiliated because in the past, that's the way we do. We make appointment, come upstairs, we discuss. That's a personal issue when you talk to one of the ladies upstairs? I don't know where we're going with this. Is that just me, or is that the company policy now?
Hello, this is Tanya Cook. Mr. Claxton, could you give me a little bit of background? It sounds as though you made an appointment to begin the proceedings to learn about your retirement, and people that you'd anticipated being there from your tenure with MUD were not there. Is that what happened?
No, I made an appointment October the 2nd with Annie Bosey, and I texted her, and I told her, is there a way we can make arrangements that I need to talk to her face to face? Didn't give no indication because I want to talk about my retirement, okay? I think, I can't see it right now. But anyway, she texted me back, said we could set up an appointment for this. Then I was at work and I was around some people that got COVID, and they told me I had to go home because of the COVID. Then I had to set it all up again. But the last time I set it up, and I have all the paper right here from my Texas. The last time we set this last one up, and she texted me back and asked me, is our meeting still on? I said, yes, matter of fact, I'm right at your door. Said, cool, okay. We go back here to this room. She said, we're waiting on Mendenhoff to come and Bonnie to come. That's not a norm, not when you talk about your retirement. It's the first, and it doesn't even make sense. With that in hand, I told her I'm not going to have a meeting like that because I just feel threatened. I felt violated because I'm talking about my retirement. And in the past, when you talk about your retirement, it's always you and one of them HR ladies or guys that you talk about, not no quorum of people that sit there and talk about retirement.
Okay. So you felt, Mr. Claxton, you felt as though having Mr. Mendenhall and Ms. Savine in the room, nope, that's never been done before. So you didn't stay in the meeting?
No.
Did the meeting happen?
No, it didn't happen because.
Okay.
No, it didn't happen.
All right. At this point, is it appropriate to ask Ms. Savine and Mr. Mendenhall to address the board in response? I see Mark walking. I see you stage right. Mr. Claxton, would that be okay?
I'm fine with it. I just want to get some resolution of this because, like I say, I should never have to go, and it's never been a practice that you go and you bring a union rep in to talk about your retirement because that is a private, personal issue.
Yes.
And I know it.
And that's why we're trying to be sensitive in addressing this in a quorum where this will be recorded, and
okay.
We have to be cautious.
All right. We're not going to talk about your actual retirement. What I'm hoping to learn is a little bit more about maybe why that happened. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director Cook. Thank you, Mr. Claxton, Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. I do recall the meeting in question that Mr. Claxton had mentioned. I was invited to attend that meeting. I would dispute that Mr. Claxton indicated that that meeting was in regards to his retirement. If Mr. Claxton wishes to make an appointment with the Human Resources Department to discuss his retirement, by all means, we will handle that meeting as we have with every other retirement meeting, and we will handle that in a private manner by our benefits specialist team, and they'll be happy to meet with you. It was the purpose of the meeting was not made clear. There have been other, I guess, events that we thought might have been the topic of that meeting. And so that's why I was asked to participate when Mr. Claxton was informed that I was invited to attend. Mr. Claxton indicated that he wanted to have a union steward present. And so Ms. Savine and I waited in the Human Resources offices for about 45 minutes or so while Mr. Claxton went to find a union steward to sit with him in that meeting. I don't believe he was able to secure a steward. And so we all decided, well, let's reschedule the meeting. Ms. Boson, Ms. Boson is her name. Ms. Boson did reach out to Mr. Claxton to schedule a follow-up meeting. And again, that had not occurred. At no point in time during these discussions was the term retirement given to us. Now that we know that the meeting is about his retirement, certainly we'll make outreach to you and have that discussion.
Thank you. Did you
Ms.
have
Cook?
anything to add, Ms. Savine?
Ms. Cook?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me mute myself.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
You know what? It's a very personal thing when a lot of people retire. They don't really want to discuss it. When I don't know what other events Mendenhoff is talking about, but I knew what my whole objection was coming to this meeting was going to be. I have talked to a couple manager people telling them that I was going to go discuss this situation upstairs with HR. Have you made your decision what you're going to do? No, I'm going to go up there and talk to them. No, when it come down to this union steward that Mendenhall is talking about, that's only when Annie come telling me or told me that Mendenhoff is coming in and Bonnie's coming in. Why are they here? Well, you asked for this meeting with HR. That is not what corresponds. I did not ask for that. I asked to speak to her directly, and this is what my whole intentions are. I'm not a madman. I worked here for 44 years. I have nothing but respect for MUD. So with that on hand, like I say, I felt humiliated and I felt violated exactly how they was treating me with this whole deal.
Well, it sounds like there are two issues here. You want to have a meeting regarding your entire retirement, so you probably want to better understand that and kind of plan ahead. And I think that can be accomplished. I would certainly ask that Bonnie work with you to get that meeting set up.
Well, you know, they want to have this meeting across the telephone with whoever's on the other end of this conversation. That is what Annie said and Bonnie said. I will not do a meeting across a telephone when I don't even know who's listening to this conversation.
Well, and that is exactly the reason I'm cautioning you about getting too much into the details regarding the issues. I think you need to work with Ms. Savine to set up a meeting so that you can discuss your retirement and other things I think will have to be addressed by other individuals outside of retirement.
Yes, and we will certainly make sure that happens, Blue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Blue.
Mr. Claxton, is that satisfactory? That next action item, or did you just want to say that for the record, or are we good going forward?
Yes, just like I told you, Ms. Cook, I don't want to do no conversation over a telephone about
I
my
see.
retirement. And I think it's very appropriate that they do everybody else that has in the past and present retiring. They make an appointment. They tell them, it used to be a norm that you call HR and say, hey, I need to have a meeting with you. Can we do this? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't give no indication really what you're talking about because a lot of things are very personal that
Yes.
you're trying to reach out and you got things flowing through your head.
Yes.
Just like Mendenhall said, this is not what he thought or they thought. You know, what are you trying to insinuate? What I don't know where we're going with this, but we talk about the past. The past is the past. It's have nothing to do with what we're talking about today. What I have in my mind, you know, what I would like to do. You know.
Well, will it work for you if Ms. Sabine, and you set up the appointment in person, face to face, to sit down and discuss your retirement and give you some way to plan for that? Sounds like you're looking forward to it.
Yes, and then may I make one more statement, and then I'm gonna let it go here. Tell you how bad I felt about it. When we walked to this room, the conference room, I'm very familiar with upstairs because I've been in a lot of meetings up there. We walked up there, we talked for a couple of seconds, and then Annie gonna just turn the light off and say, okay, what are you turning the light off on me for? I mean, you know, you still got to see to come out the door. You know, it just, the whole concept did not make no sense. Just like I said, I'm not here to badmouth nobody or nothing. I would like to be treated equal, just like I want to treat you. You want to be treated, I would like the same treatment.
And I think we can accomplish that.
Yes.
And Blue, I've known you for 30 years. I worked with you up at the Florence plant when I was a summer employee. This sounds like a miscommunication and a big misunderstanding. And I know Bonnie will be glad to meet with you and get this rectified. So if it helps, I apologize for the misunderstanding. And I work with Mark, I work with Bonnie. I know they would never intend to make you feel the way you did. So I am sorry you had to go through this, and it was certainly unintentional on anybody's part. So knowing you for 30 years, I just want to share that with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for taking time to come down.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. That I think it's good to get the air cleared and
Yes.
start to work in the right direction here.
Yes. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? If not, that concludes the agenda items for the committee meetings.
Gwen?
Yes, Mark.
This is Mike. I do have one quick question, and it's for Jim Knight. I don't know if he's on there or
Well,
not.
Mike, you got ahead of me because I was just going to say, do any board members have further comments?
Oh, I thought you were going to the...
I wasn't wrapping it up. I was going to give you the chance.
Thank you. Sorry I jumped ahead. If Jim Knight is on, I'd like to know if our LNG tank is full going into the winter.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Jim Knight, Vice President of Gas Operations. Yes, the LNG tank is full. We're at about 101 feet going in as of right now. So we're in good shape.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Gwen.
And Jim, I don't think that map behind you went unnoticed, Mr. Weatherman, Mr. Forecaster, so.
Well,
you like that, huh?
It's always good to have
Absolutely.
on board. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're going to take a break, and we'll convene in 10 minutes, which should put us at about 4:43. 1819 Farnham Street due to the governor's recently issued executive order number 20-36 in response to the surge in COVID-19 cases. In-person meeting requirements of the Open Meetings Act are waived. Board members and district personnel have the option of participating remotely or in person. This order will be effective December 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2021. I would like to remind those in attendance in the chamber today that we must abide by the City Council ordinance requiring that all those present wear a face mask or a face covering in indoor public settings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Please also continue to be mindful of social distancing. Roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Friend? Frost? Frost? Mr. Frost, can you unmute? I know he's on.
Have we lost him?
Possibly.
Let me check and see if I can. I don't have access to his microphone since he's call-in only. Travis, do you know if there's a way to check to see if Mr. Frost is unmuted? Otherwise, proceed with the roll call, and I'd ask Mr. Mendenhall if it's okay if I give Jack a call privately on another phone and see what the problem is. But I want him marked present for the record because he is. I want to do everything I can to make sure we get that recorded.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Doyle, please.
McGowan?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Kavanaugh?
Here.
I'd like to advise those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. Due to the majority of attendees participating remotely, we will omit the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Approval of the minutes for the committee meetings and the regular board meeting for November 5th, 2020. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move for acceptance.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Capital expenditures, Director Bagley.
I move that we approve the capital expenditures as outlined in Corey O'Brien's memo dated November 23rd, 2020, and discussed in committee.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Change order number 1 for electrical upgrades at pump station at 36 and Edna Streets. Director Bagley, please.
I move that we approve change order 1 as outlined in the memo from Corey O'Brien dated November 20th, 2020, and discussed in committee.
Thank you. Second?
Second, was that did someone second it? If not, I will second it.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Ratification of change order number 2 for headquarters building renovation. Again, Director Bagley, please.
I move that we ratify the change order 2 for the headquarter renovation as outlined in the memo dated November 13th, 2020 from Melissa Polito and discussed in committee.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mary, roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates. Director Bagley, please.
I move that we accept contracts and payments of final bids as discussed in committee this morning and outlined in the November 23rd, 2020 memo from Steph Henn.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mary, roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Bids on materials and contracts. Director Bagley, we're keeping you busy.
I move we approve the bids on materials and contracts as presented by John Zellers in committee and in the memo dated November 20th, 2020 from Mr. Zellers.
Thank
Second.
you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a discussion? Roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Main extensions, Director Bagley.
I move that we approve the main extensions as discussed in committee and outlined in the memo dated November 23rd, 2020 from Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Annual marketing budget, Director Cook. Director Cook? Director Kavanaugh, can you take that?
I'm annual marketing budget.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Do I have that motion?
Yes, please.
All right. I move we approve the proposed marketing budget as presented in Mr. Stanek's letter to the committee dated November 23rd, 2020.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to thank Jason for the good presentation this morning and for the good work your team's doing. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost? McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Wage and/or salary increases in ratification. Director Bagley, please.
I move that we approve the wage and salary increases and ratifications as outlined in the memo dated November 19th, 2020 and in the memo, in the committee discussion from today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that Director Frost?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are you seconding the motion
All right.
on this?
Second.
Okay, I believe that was a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
2020 bargaining unit wage reopener, Director Bagley.
I move we approve the 2020 bargaining unit wage reopener as outlined in the memo dated November 23rd, 2020 from Ms. Savine and discussed in committee this morning.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, both of you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Settlement of workers' compensation claim. Director Cook, please, for a motion.
I move we approve the opposed settlement of workers' compensation as proposed in Mr. Kim's letter to the committee dated November 25th, 2020.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there
Second.
any, thank you both. Is there any further discussion? And then roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Approval of 2021 gas and water budget. Director McGowan.
Yes, I move that we adopt and approve the 2021 budget as proposed and discussed in committee meeting this morning.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mary, roll call, please.
Bagley,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Frost,
Yes.
McGowan,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Approval of 2021 water rate increase, Director McGowan.
I move that we approve the 4.35% proposed increase to the water component as discussed in committee and to be effective May 2nd, 2021.
Thank
Second.
you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mary, roll call, please.
Bagley,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Frost,
Yes.
McGowan,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Other matters of district business for discussion. Do any board members have any further comments?
Madam Chair, I just have one reminder I'd like to provide to our customer owners. They have until December 15th to inquire about and to get any relief funding from the CARES Act. If they go to medomaha.com/COVID-19 relief, if they had any struggles in the last year paying their bills, this grant would help them with that. So I just wanted to get that on record and encourage anybody who needs assistance to please go to medomaha.com/COVID-19 relief.
And there is still funding left in that account,
Yes.
as far as you know?
In fact,
Oh,
I saw there's quite a bit of money left yet. So anybody who needs the help, please reach out.
And could you repeat that, the website again, or the site they go to again, please?
Gladly. medomaha.com/COVID-19 relief.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? I would like to announce that the location of next month's January 7th, 2021 regular regular monthly board meeting will likely be taking place at the district's new headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, depending upon the COVID-19 situation. I hope you
so.
can still hear me. More information will be forthcoming regarding the location and format and will be provided in the public meeting notice as well as on the MUD website. This board began meeting in this legislative chamber on November of 2019 while the relocation of the MUD office building took place. The historical transition of the Metropolitan Utilities District monthly board meetings from its downtown office building was made much easier, turn the page here, in large part because of the efforts of the building commission team. For that reason, I would like to take a moment to publicly thank Paul Cohen, the administrator of the Omaha Douglas Public Building Commission, and all the Public Building Commission staff who have been so generous and gracious in making arrangements for us to hold our monthly meetings in this room during the past year. We especially appreciate their assistance given all the additional challenges that were brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Who saw that coming? On behalf of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, we thank you all so much and want you to know how much we appreciate your assistance getting us all through this difficult time. Do any board members have any further comments they would like to make?
Director Howard, Mark.
Yes, go ahead.
Mark Doyle, President. I want to thank the board and all of staff for facilitating our first blended, both in-person and remote meeting. It went off very well. We lost Mr. Frost for a few minutes, but we got him back. And next month, as you mentioned, we will We will plan to have our physical location at the new headquarters, but the order from the governor doesn't expire at this time till the end of January. So we will always offer the board remote, in-person, blended, whatever you want to do, we'll facilitate. So thank you for your cooperation and your support during these times, and thanks to staff for making this not only a functional meeting, but we meet the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, and doing the public's business is very important, and we don't take it lightly. So thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a nice holiday season, although I hope to speak with you before then. It's almost upon us.
It is.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays.
Well, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do this remotely. If you listen to the nightly news, it's enough to make you stay home 24/7. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to offer any comments?
Nobody coming down, Gwen.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
My eye is on the floor. I wish everyone happy holidays and stay safe. Be cautious, take care of yourselves, and we will meet again, and we will be through this. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank
Second.
you.
Second.
And we have a second. We have more than one second, which is always good. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please, Mary.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
The regular monthly board meeting and public hearings are now adjourned. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jack.